Raise your hand if you were a safety patrol in elementary school. Oh my gosh, there's so many of you. Okay, shout out, give me a couple of things of what you guys did. What did you do? You bossed people around, you did flags? Okay, what'd you do? In their car seats, that's so cute. What about you?
I pretended to be a safety patrol and just talked to my
Oh my gosh. Okay, Avenue.
I said a car line.
You sat at the car line. What'd you do? Watch kindergarten. That's what I did. So when I was actually in 5th grade, I had the most awesome job as a safety patrol to where I got to walk 3 little kindergartners to my school bus with me. And I got to sit with them and make sure that they behaved. 2 were twins. They were awesome. And then one was named Margaret, but she called herself Meg, and she was like a little mini me. And it was really fun. It was my favorite part. And I honestly kind of really loved being in charge and getting to lead them and, give that example and have that kind of power over them. And honestly, I still love being in charge today. And if you're anything like me, you don't always love when someone else is in charge of you or has authority over you. Am I right? No, I see a couple of grumbles there, like, I don't know. So authority simply means that someone has the power or right to be in charge of you or someone or something. And so when you have authority, it means you have the ability to make decisions or set rules or use your power or influence over someone else. And so when someone has authority over you, it means they have the ability to do that in a way that directly affects you. And so why are we talking about this today? Well, 1, we're talking about power in this whole series and how we use it. But 2, the truth is, authority is something we'll have to deal with for our entire lives. And it's why we hope that by challenging how we think about authority now, we'll better be able to deal with the people in charge of us, both now and later. And so maybe to some of us, having to listen to authority figures doesn't really seem like that big of a deal. We don't really mind having a parent or a teacher or a coach in charge of us from time to time. We like the authority figures in our lives. Our parents or guardians are awesome. We love our teachers and our coaches. And our leaders at church are the best, which is very true, right? I'm going to shout out. Oh, the leader can't give the shout out. I just heard an ew from a student. It's okay. They love you guys. You love them, right? Yeah! Okay, thank you. You guys are so funny. And so even though we might not always be happy with things that they ask us to do or the rules that we have to follow, we trust those people, We respect them. They're easy authority figures to follow. But to others, having someone in charge of us for the rest of our lives sounds like the worst news that you could have heard all day. And I'm so sorry if that's you, and I'm so sorry if I gave you that news. Oh, and why is that? Well, we all gave some answers to that last week, actually. So if you were here last week, we asked you a question of why is it sometimes the worst when we have to follow authority figures? And let's see what some of you guys said, which I'm actually so impressed by what you guys had to say. It was really insightful stuff. So first, because sometimes they're kind of dumb with their decisions. They have control over you, and they choose what's right or wrong. Or because sometimes it gets annoying and you're tired of being told what to do and you want to be in charge for once. Maybe you don't understand what they're saying or you don't really trust them. Sometimes you disagree with the rules that they make you follow and you don't want to go against your own values. Sometimes what happens isn't fully the truth, but you don't want to be a snitch and get bullied, which that is a very true thing. I get that. Sometimes you don't see the reasoning behind it and you're not sure what to follow. Because we as young people, or you as young people, are developing your own opinions and ideas. And we know there's an option where we can disobey or choose a different path at anything that may seem like an inconvenience. And that is very true. I still sometimes do that. And because some people abuse their power. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We all have so many reasons why it's hard to deal with authority. But I think one of the main reasons is we don't always trust the people in charge. We haven't always had the best authority figures in our lives, and that makes the thought of being under authority forever really scary. And when they ask us to do things we know aren't right, when we see them do things that we know aren't right, when they treat us unfairly based off of our age or where we live or the color of our skin, or when they hurt or threaten or abandon or abuse us, that's when having someone in charge does not feel so great. And so maybe you totally get this because you're dealing with this very thing right now. And your relationship with authority is complicated and messy because your authority figures can be, well, complicated and messy. Maybe you have a teacher who doesn't grade everyone fairly. You work hard, but you know you can't improve your grade because that teacher only gives good grades to the people on the team that they coach. Maybe you have a coach who's just really mean. They yell at you and they call you names and make fun of the way you look and talk down to everyone on the team. And you know you're supposed to listen to them, but you don't think that the way that they're treating you and your teammates is right. And no matter what your relationship is with authority right now, the reality is, at some point in our lives, we're all going to find ourselves dealing with some great people in charge and some not so great people in charge. And because of that, we have to ask ourselves this question. What do we do when we have to deal with bad authority? And so that's what we're really going to be talking tonight. How do we handle when we have a bad authority figure or someone that's not using their authority how they should? So thankfully, we're not the only ones who have struggled with feeling this way. So tonight, I want to talk to you about this guy named David, who you might be familiar with, who had to decide how to deal with an authority figure in his life who wasn't always the greatest. So you might actually recognize David from the story of David and Goliath. He was the one that threw a slingshot rock to a giant guy named Goliath and killed him because the Goliath guy was bullying the whole nation of Israel. So David came out, and he was very small, and he came out and went, pew, and then he got him. And so that was a really cool story. So you may recognize from that. But if not, it's okay. I'm going to tell you a little background on the story. So you see, God had actually picked David to be the next king of Israel. Pretty amazing, right? Wouldn't it be nice to be a king or queen? Yeah? Okay, maybe not. Maybe you guys don't really want that. But there is just one problem here. There was already a king named Saul, and he did not want to give up his throne. In fact, Saul wanted to stay king so badly that he decided to kill David. Isn't that insane? Not the best use of your authority, if you ask me. And so when David found this out, he literally ran for his life. I mean, naturally, if someone's trying to kill you, run for your life. And that's where we actually pick up in the story. So King Saul and his army had been chasing David around the land. And this time, they were getting pretty close to actually finding him. So David and his men must have known that the army was coming because they decided to hide in this cave. And so pretty soon, Saul and his army ended up walking right by the exact cave that David and his men were hiding in. So close that even Saul himself went into the cave for a quick bathroom break. I mean, crazy. Now it's Saul and David and his men in the same cave, and Saul's by himself. So of course, David's men encourage him to use this opportunity to take Saul out. I mean, it was David's chance. Years of frustration and confusion had finally come down to this moment. Saul had been an awful authority figure in David's life, and now David finally had the chance to do something about it. One slash of the sword, and David's problems would all just go away. It would all be over. But let's look at what David decided to do instead. So David crept forward and cut off a piece of the hem of Saul's robe. I'm sorry, what? He cut off a piece of hem of Saul's robe? It's like me standing in a cave and someone coming up and cutting off a piece of my jeans. Like, why? And that's not how it was supposed to go down. This was supposed to be David's chance to finally get even, to right the wrongs being done to him by the king who was in charge. But he let Saul go. The only thing he did was cut off a little piece of fabric off of his robe. I mean, Saul left the cave without ever knowing that David and his men were there. That's pretty crazy. And then it gets crazier because then David did something even crazier. He ran out after Saul. He got his attention. And he showed him that piece of cloth in his hand. And in that moment, Saul knew that David had spared his life. And so what David said next explains it all. So let's look at it here. So he said, "May the Lord judge between us. Perhaps the Lord will punish you for what you're trying to do to me, but I will never harm you." As that old proverb says, "From evil people come evil deeds. So you can be sure I will never harm you. May the Lord therefore judge which of us is right and punish the guilty one. He is my advocate, and he will rescue me from your power." So David could have taken down Saul right then and there. And for being honest, he probably had a very good reason to do that. But what David realized is that even though Saul was powerful, David still had some power of his own. As he had a power to choose to be honorable. Now, I love how in this moment, David quoted a saying that he had heard growing up over and over again. He said, "From evil people come evil deeds." He basically said, "You know what, Saul? I am not going to be one of those evil people. King Saul, you may be like that, but I'm not going to be like that." Saul may have been a killer, but David would not be. Saul may have been disrespectful, but David would not stoop to his level. Saul may have been wrong and evil and deserving of dishonor, but David knew that in honoring Saul, David was ultimately honoring God. And that the same thing goes for you and for me. And so the reality is, we can't choose the authority figures in our lives, what they do. We don't have power to be able to have power over what they do. We can't decide when they are going to do the right thing and when they aren't. But we can honor God by choosing the best actions and responses to the authorities in our lives. We can choose to be honorable no matter what's going on around us. Their actions, no matter who the they is, doesn't have to determine our response. And so does that mean that we always obey? That we always comply? We always give in? No, that is not what I'm saying. David ran for his life. And if he wouldn't have run for his life, if he had obeyed, then he would have died. He did decide, however, that no amount of Saul's evil could ever force him to do evil as well. It wasn't worth it. He wouldn't become like the person he was running from. Because you can always choose to be honorable, no matter what. Now listen, I know that's easier said than done. I get that this isn't going to be that simple. But it's possible to be honorable when authority figures in our lives aren't acting all that honorable themselves. You can always choose to be honorable. But honoring someone doesn't mean we have to obey everything they say, that we have to agree with them and worship at their feet. Guys, honoring bad authority means choosing to be honorable with how we respond to them. So here's how we do that. So first, we think about what we say and how we say it. How you talk to your authority and about your authority matters. And so don't raise your voice. Don't get mean. Don't call them names. Choose your words wisely when you're talking both to and about the authority figures in your lives. It's okay to speak up when you feel like you've been wronged, misunderstood, or disrespected. But as you speak up, remember to do it with respect. 2, remember they're human too. Our authority figures are not perfect. I am not perfect. Your small group leaders are not perfect. Your coaches and your parents are not perfect. Even the good ones, they're going to mess up, make mistakes, and say and do things that they shouldn't. When that happens, we can choose to remember that just like us, they aren't going to get it right all the time. And instead of shutting down or blowing up when that happens, we can choose to honor them by giving them a chance to right their wrong or do better next time. After all, don't we want the same for when that happens to us? And then 3, do what's safe for you. So some of you might be in a situation where the wrong person is in charge and they're using their authority in a way that's dangerous or harmful to you. If that's you right now, I just want to say that I'm so sorry that you have to be in that situation. And I want you to know that sometimes being honorable means speaking up when you're not safe. And so when you're being hurt or abused or asked to do something that isn't safe, being honorable means getting help. And so if you're listening right now and you feel like you need to speak up about something, I want to encourage you to talk to your small group leader or another trusted adult about this today. They want to help you to be honorable and by doing what's safe for you. They want to make sure that you are safe. And so remember, you can always choose to be honorable. And while that might not be the easiest choice that we can make sometimes, the good news is that you have people like your small group leader and your small group to make sure that you don't have to make that choice alone. Your group is a great place to talk about how you can choose to be honorable toward the people in charge that may not be using their power well, or that may not be easy to honor themselves. Now, as you go into your small groups today, I want you to think about this question. What's one way you can choose to be honorable to someone in charge? Will you pray with me? Lord, sometimes having a lot of power or even having a little power can go wrong. Sometimes we can make mistakes. Sometimes we have people in our lives that don't know how to use their authority or power in the right way. I ask that when that happens, you help us be able to do the honorable thing by being honorable, by being respectful, and by choosing our words wisely. Lord, I ask that you help these students with that this week. I ask that you be with them in their small groups and you give them a safe place to be able to talk about whatever they need to. It's in your name I pray. Amen.